Join us for MDS Inspire 2024 happening March 3rd through 5th in Las Vegas. An inspiring 3-day event co-hosted with Carbon 6, filled with networking, new connections, and business growth. Why should you attend? We've got 20 plus expert speakers, 3 days of networking, and zero fluff. If you're in e-commerce, missing this event is a mistake because this is the only MDS event open to everyone. See you there.
For about 18 months, best we can tell, I was the largest seller of automotive filtration in the world, and the vendors couldn't figure out who I was. What I was good at was building relationships and finding valuable relationships and providing value to relationships.
Welcome to the $1 Million Sellers Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Shucet. Today we have Tim Jordan from Carbon 6 on the call. Tim, it's good to sit down and chat with you a little bit, man. I'm excited for the listeners to hear your story and how you got started on Amazon, where you're at now as the Chief Community Officer at Carbon 6. So go ahead and let us know a little bit about you and your story about how you did millions in the first year on Amazon and how you got a little bit of a War Dog story for us.
Yeah, and the War Dogs, we're talking about the movie with Jonah Hill, and I can't remember the other guy's name, where essentially they were selling stuff to the Defense Department, right? They were selling guns. And
Michael something, I think. I forget.
Michael something. It's crazy great movie. I was doing something similar, but I wasn't selling to the Department of Defense. So I wasn't a gun runner. I wasn't selling weapons. But when the U.S. government was heavy into Iraq and Afghanistan, everything needed for infrastructure, from diesel power generators to dump truck tires to food, was all sourced through the State Department. And I was working as a full-time firefighter. Barely knew how to check an email. It's firefighter, paramedic. And with our schedule, we had a lot of time off. We had a lot of, downtime. We all had side hustles, and I'd had some construction stuff and some various stuff. And got into this crazy opportunity where I could sit at the fire station on my computer and process these government RFQs and work these bids and get lower pricing so I could make some margin on it, then sell it. And we were shipping containers, like multiple containers every month overseas. And because we were shipping it overseas, it was for the government, I could go to these vendors and get crazy low pricing. Well, then one day I'm sitting around looking at this, specifically an oil filter for like a big mechanical truck, big diesel truck. And I'm buying them for like $4.50, and they're selling on Amazon for $29.99. I thought, man, my pricing's so great. Surely I can make some money on this, but I didn't know you could sell on Amazon. So I actually put a Craigslist ad out for someone to teach me to sell on eBay. And I had this guy respond to this Craigslist ad. And he was a member of another, community. It was kind of starting in some different things at Amazon. And he came up, he looked at my wholesale list, and he's like, dude, this is the holy grail. You've got everything. And where most people are restricted from brands, these brands will sell it to you because they think it's all going overseas. But you should sell on Amazon. So he introduced me to the idea of Amazon. We took off and did great. At one point, for about 18 months, best we can tell, I was the largest seller of automotive filtration in the world online, right? So I wasn't beating Advanced Auto Parts and AutoZone, but online I was the biggest because I was selling on Amazon, then I was selling wholesale through a website I set up, and the pricing that I had, like I wasn't following MAP pricing, so I could beat all the MAP pricing in retail stores, and everybody was buying my stuff, and the vendors couldn't figure out who I was. They're like, oh, some dude selling Amazon, because I was back before the seller name was shown. But they're like, oh, it's not that guy Tim. He's shipping all his stuff to Afghanistan. And I was shipping a lot of it, but I was also siphoning off a bunch to Amazon, which is cool.
Right. Nice, man. That's a good story about you getting in that game, man. What year was that you got started on Amazon? 2015. Nice. Those were good times for Amazon sellers.
Yeah. I wish we could go back to that.
Yeah. One big thing that sticks out that you said in there, Tim, is that how you were a firefighter, you could barely check an email. I know you do a lot with like personal growth and development, and that reminds me, I forget who it was, but they were talking about being a leader and how you really have to change constantly. Like you have to be willing to kind of change and reshape your identity, like who you think you are, if you really want to lead people. And I just would love to get your opinion on that and a little more just about like what your role is at Carbon 6 now and what work is like for you today.
Well, I wish I had some great wisdom that I could share about, preparing yourself for growth or stretching into new positions and things like that. But I don't, because I've actually been pretty bad at it. Now, what I've been good at is jumping into opportunities head first, not knowing how deep the water is or if I'm going to get eaten by, a shark or alligator, and just figuring it out, right? Most of my time in the past 10 years has been like drinking from a fire hose, right? Taking on too much water, just swallowing as fast as I can so I don't drown. So kind of retroactively, there's been a lot of growth. I've learned a lot of things. I've, had very little business experience, had zero digital marketing experience, and jumped into this opportunity that forced me to learn. So a lot of times I was kind of trying to catch up my skill set or my maturity to the opportunities that I had, which was fast, but it was also reckless and very stressful, and obviously made a lot of mistakes along the way. It's funny watching people that are much more meticulous and maybe thoughtful is not the right word, but intentional about the way that they approach opportunities and the way that they build things based on their known skill set or based on an amount of time that they know it's going to take them to gain that skill set. And I've always been jealous of those people because that's never been me. I've just jumped in and tried to swim, right? Now, luckily, I've jumped into a lot of water and learned to swim in a lot of it and gained a lot of, knowledge and skills, but got a long way to go. And that kind of happened with my role with Carbon 6. As I was figuring out this e-commerce thing, there were a lot of things that I just was not good at. I'm not great operationally or organizationally. I'm bad at making hires. What I was good at was building relationships and finding valuable relationships and providing value to relationships. So what that meant is I was able to get involved in small mastermind communities of sellers and share what I was doing and learn from others, and built mentorships and built friendships that helped me to sell and grow and create other businesses and service businesses. And those relationships and kind of understanding people, understanding Amazon sellers, understanding kind of, the solopreneurship that we oftentimes, kind of work through as Amazon sellers, was able to help me, get by for a while and then present myself or be presented with different opportunities where I could grow. And Carbon 6 was that. I started talking to our CEO, Justin, about just the ecosystem. I was seeing him at some of these events where he was kind of snooping around before Carbon 6 went public, and got to be buddies with him and spend a lot of time just talking about the Amazon seller, talking about the problems that we have, and talking about the various communities, and talking about just kind of like the human ecosystem of e-commerce. And eventually that led to them offering me a position with Carbon 6. And the first thing that he talked about was equity in the company. I thought, well, that sounds great. It's a fast-growing company, it looks like. It'd be great to have equity. And then the second thing he said was, we want you to come on and be an executive. And I think I said something like, absolutely not. And the reason for that was, I know that I'm not a great full-time employee in a lot of positions. I've had other full-time, even executive positions in this space at other service providers. And it's tough for me to operate in kind of a more structured environment, right? An environment that forces me to be a little bit more corporate because, you have a big team and you have a lot more responsibility. Eventually he talked me into it. Didn't take him long. I think 3.5 minutes probably. And since then I've been really stretching and growing and learning from incredible mentors and colleagues, especially in the executive team at Carbon 6 that do come from more traditional business, right? And my role right now is really focused on community. Going back to that first thing I talked about, relationships and understanding people. As Chief Community Officer, I have multiple roles, but one is to advocate for the community to Carbon 6. Service providers, software companies, logistic companies, fintech companies, they all impact us as sellers because we need them as part of the ecosystem. So I get to be a voice in the executive team from the seller perspective on things that should be happening, things that we should be doing, and just kind of acting as advisor. And the other thing I get to do is advocate for Carbon 6 back to the community. So whether it's content, whether it's getting involved in sponsoring events or sponsoring communities like MDS, I get to be heavily involved in that. So it's pretty sweet gig and get to learn a lot every day and interact with some cool people and still get to operate my Amazon businesses on the side. So it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's such a great story. I share a lot of your same feelings, Tim, around like structure. Although I have found when I do set up some structure on my own, I tend to kind of thrive in it. Of course, I don't want to be like a slave to like someone else's structure, right? Like I like to surf. If the waves get good, I want to go surf. But the structure that I set up for myself kind of allows me to do that. Have you kind of found that within your own? I'm sure you have some type of structure day to day that you lean on a little bit, but can you identify with anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, the thing that helped me the most with structuring what I do is starting to be selective about what I do. And what I mean is, I've had this bad problem of saying yes to everything. I can do that. Let me help here. Let me jump in and be involved in this. And a lot of those things that I want to be involved with, whether it's my ego or whether it's just curiosity or whether it's just wanting to help, somebody else or a different team, they might be things that I'm naturally good at. It'd be really hard for me if our CFO called and said, Tim, I really, really need your help processing these spreadsheets and figuring this out. Like, I would say, sure, let me jump in it. But dude, I'm the last person in the world you want touching the finances and the financial planning, right? So when I was filling up my day-to-day, so to speak, the projects I was doing with things that I'm not naturally good at or things that I was really going to have to stretch myself or even things that ultimately wouldn't move the needle, it was hard to have any sort of structure because I kept failing in a lot of it, right? So I would try to set up goals or habits or timelines for projects, and they kept just failing. So once I started filtering out what I put into my agenda, then it's easier to put a structure in place. And that structure isn't super refined. I'm not doing a lot of 25-minute sprints and 5-minute off. And, I'm not, on the 5 a.m. club, taking a cold shower every 5 and working from, every morning and working from 5:15 to 6. There are people that are much more structured. But by just eliminating a lot of the noise, when I do have time to sit and work, it goes pretty fast and I can usually knock out a lot of it in a big chunk.
I love hearing stories like this because one, you don't hear enough of them. And two, I love things that go like against, let's call it like traditional knowledge, right? Like, and the world is changing. And like, that's the one thing I would love for people to get out of this podcast. It's like the success stories of entrepreneurs in this digital world or this new world where like you can actually focus on what you love to do and be successful with it and like find people that appreciate you for what you do, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing and staying focused on it. Like the world needs more of that, in my opinion, because people would just be happier because they're doing what they love to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's kind of what I get out of your story, Tim. It's like someone who stayed, you sound like a very self-aware individual. You sound like someone who can adapt to anything, any situation that you're put into, and you bring value to every relationship you're in because you're really there just trying to add value, and adding value to sellers adds value to Carbon 6, and everybody's winning in that relationship, and those opportunities are out there now, and it would just be great to see more people like take that leap of faith, whatever it is. I kind of had the same thing, Tim, where I would say yes to anything. What's that one saying? You like trying to figure out how to fly on the way down.
Yeah, how to build an airplane while you're flying.
Yeah, how to build an airplane while you're flying, man. I'm a little more refined these days, and it's great, but I have stayed true to myself and the things I love to do, and sometimes that means hard decisions have to be made. But it is what it is, man. And I think that's what the world needs to hear, a little more of those stories.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Kudos to you for that, man. And, I want to hear more about like Carbon 6 and what they're doing in the industry and some cool stuff that you're heading up. It's great to have you guys so involved with MDS now. I love seeing you guys at the events. We just had the yacht trip in Miami, and it was so cool seeing you down there. And I'm excited for MDS Inspire, which Carbon 6 is hosting. We're going to have 3 great days of, masterminds and workshops and just a lot of great content with a lot of great people. So yeah, why don't you let us know a little bit about the Carbon 6 MDS relationship, what you guys have going on there. And I would love to know some exciting projects you guys are working on too.
Yeah, I'll start off with, kind of just by explaining some of my initial excitement about Carbon 6. Carbon 6 was developed on this thesis that there were a lot of kind of fragmented and individual software companies that are out in the space that were built by sellers, that there would be some benefit to starting to blend some of those together and share data and, things like that. But what the original founders and then folks like myself, feel strongly about with Carbon 6 is that this entire magic of marketplace e-commerce isn't just the software, it's also the communities, it's also the expertise, it's also the educators, it's all of those things that combine, right? So when Carbon 6 was coming together, they weren't just acquiring software companies, they were acquiring Amazon expertise, and they were acquiring traditional SaaS and traditional business expertise. We've got executives that don't come from the e-commerce world, but they come from the software world and know how to make amazing software or how to build, efficient teams and customer service systems that, will help sellers. And then we also acquired experts like, our Chelsea Cohen, who founded SoStock. We've got Vanessa Hung. We've got Clayton Atchison, who, is now an external traffic expert. He was a big Amazon seller. And when we combine all of that, it creates something important. But without community, it would be really hard, one, for Carbon 6 to sell. Selfishly, it's a lot easier to sell our solutions through communities because, like the digital marketing footprint is hard to establish just for traditional marketing. But also it creates a feedback loop where we can learn. We can understand what people want. We can understand, what people need in the industry. We can, kind of put our finger on the pulse of the industry and respond to it. I recently sat down with our chief product officer several months ago now. And he said, Tim, I want you to look at this list that we've been creating. And so he'd been working with Amazon sellers, agencies, big sellers to small sellers, everybody. And it was a list of all of the actions that Amazon sellers have to perform to stay in business and succeed. And it was like over 200 items, from various pieces of keyword research to purchase ordering to receiving samples to running PPC to like everything. It's over 200 items. And Carbon 6 really only took care of a few of those, a handful of those. And we thought, how cool is it that we have an opportunity to continue to provide solutions that make sellers' jobs easy? I never would have been successful on Amazon without Jungle Scout. I needed a keyword research tool, right? Like Amazon gave us that data. So the third-party services and software and data providers are very imperative to us. So Carbon 6 is pretty exciting because, we start off with a great base of expertise and software, but now we can look at that entire holistic, view of needs and not saying we're getting the logistics business or anything like that, but there's a lot of those things that we can help facilitate for sellers, and we basically already have the solutions for them. We just needed to kind of put them all together and make them accessible.
And I can definitely attest to in Miami, the presentation that you did from that I believe Vanessa put together and you communicated to us at the masterminds on behalf of Carbon 6. Like, it was so spot on, man. Like, the community needed that in such a big way. I mean, to understand the lingo that, Seller Central is using behind the scenes and these methods of using a flat file to get things done faster, because on Amazon, time is of the essence. We want to get our listings back up as quickly as possible, or whatever issue we're facing. I mean, we really want to fix that stuff quickly, and knowing the right word to use when communicating to Seller Central, like that is the secret sauce. And that's what you brought to that presentation in Miami. So if you're in MDS, you can get access to that presentation. But Tim, for anybody listening, I don't know if you have anywhere you want to direct them to get access to that resource, or to Vanessa, or if there's a tool that you guys
MDS
have
Inspire
that can help with that stuff.
Yeah, come to MDS Inspire. Bunch of us are going to be there. Vanessa is going even deeper on a lot of that stuff. It'd be a great place to come access that information.
Amazing. So yeah, that's exciting that she's going to be there. I'm definitely looking forward to getting some more flat file info. Although, to be honest, Tim, we've got a Carbon 6 company handling a lot of our Amazon stuff over at Data Driven. And that has been a great relationship. Working with those guys has really allowed me to not be just an Amazon guy anymore. As much as I love, getting in Amazon and banging some stuff out and making some money and making some moves, I can't always be the Amazon guy to really get to where I'm going, which kind of brings me back to the leadership thing, man. Like I had to make a change. I had to dive into something new. And maybe you've got some advice for some people that are struggling with that. I've got a couple things that have worked for me recently, but like, what would you say to someone who's kind of going with that like identity shift where they're like, man, I've been doing this for so long, and now I want to go down this route. I want to be a CEO. I want to be a COO, or I am a CEO and I need to stop micromanaging my Amazon stuff. Do you have any advice you would give to someone for that?
Yeah, I think that it would be really start with transparency and vulnerability, right? If you're thinking you need to make a change, and maybe you're just trying to think and decide, is this change necessary? Should I make it? And then once you decide, hey, I'm going to start moving into this different position, to this different role, trying to figure out how to do it. Both of those have been done before. There are people that have more experience and more wisdom in that than you do. And what I've identified about myself for sure is that, as an entrepreneur, at least an entrepreneurial spirit, we like to just grab the bull by the horns and do everything ourselves. Well, there's a lot of things that I can do by myself, but wouldn't it be much easier with some help, with some guidance, with someone that's already done this before? Right? So for me, I started trying to be more open about difficult decisions I'm trying to make, or with stretches that I'm trying to make, or changes that I'm trying to make with those around me, because a lot of them are going to have great advice.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first brought our first baby home, me and my wife brought the first baby home, and it was a disaster. Nothing was going right? The baby was colicky, screaming all the time. I was going crazy because I felt like I couldn't fix anything. And we had, well-meaning older friends, older moms, grandmas that would come to the house and check on us, and they'd offer a piece of advice. And my wife would get so mad. I'm glad she won't listen to this. She'd get so mad. They'd leave, and she'd say, who do they think they are telling me how to raise and take care of my baby? I know better than they do. It's my baby. And one day I looked at her and I said, no, you don't. You're a rookie. You've never done this before. What on earth makes you think that you know better than this lady who has raised 4 kids and 17 grandkids? What? Now, I will, admit she's right about her caring more about that baby than anybody else, and she will get to know that child more than anybody else. But when it's a 3-day baby and it's your first baby, we're absolute rookies. So kind of for us, or for at least me, in business, I try to avoid that mentality of thinking I know it all and thinking I already have a game plan, and just let other people know what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish, and then let them pitch in and help me navigate that, and it helps eliminate a lot of potential problems for myself that I would like to avoid, not having learned the hard way.
Nice, man. That's a very well said. And, it's a simple thing, right? Like, just, don't act like you know it all, and you can get some advice from some people that have some experience with something that you don't. There's a lot of wisdom in admitting you don't know something, right?
Yeah.
And being open and honest with the people, especially at Carbon 6. I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, Justin had invited me and Eugene over. You guys had gotten a house down in Florida. I think it was the first yacht day when Justin was there. The first year that you guys came. And I got to meet some of the Carbon 6 guys, and it was just cool to be surrounded by, all these people that had accomplished something on their own, and now they were coming together and joining forces. And you could feel the energy in there. You could feel the excitement. You could feel like the entrepreneurial energy hadn't been squashed, right? Like, I know Justin has said that before, where he really wants like these people to just keep being entrepreneurs, but doing it together with Carbon 6. And I think that's a great philosophy.
Yeah, we were
I'm
having
excited to see how it all plays out
in
for you guys.
Toronto, I think 2 weeks ago, and there was like a marketing team meeting. And I think there were 7 or 8 of us in the room, and like 6 of us had businesses on the side. And Nassim, one of our execs, made the comment. He's like, "Look how entrepreneurial this room is." So like everything from every angle is really being led and driven by entrepreneurs, which is cool.
Right. Yeah. It's great. Well, I'm excited to see you guys at MDS Inspire. That's happening March 3rd through 6th. I'm flying out there on the 2nd. So it sounds like I'm going to see you there, Tim. I'm excited to hang out again with you and the Carbon 6 crew, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you putting all this together and doing what you can for the MDS community. And we love being a part of everything that MDS is doing and hope we can continue to for a long time.
You're welcome, Tim. Thanks for coming on, man. And I look forward to seeing you in Vegas.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.